Welcome back to Friday Night Arcade. My name is Aaron, and this week we're kicking off the October Halloween season by taking a closer look at one of my favorite spooky titles for the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Uninvited. It's a good old-fashioned haunted house tale and part of the MacVenture series. I've covered the MacVenture series before on this channel, so I won't go too much into it, but this was a series of first-person point-and-click adventure games developed by ICOM Simulations. They were originally released on computers in the mid-80s and ported over to the NES in a slightly different order shortly thereafter. The characters and stories of these games were unrelated, but the gameplay was basically the same across the board. Let me explain how this works in case you've never played one of these before. You control this cursor on the screen and it sorta acts like a mouse cursor. You have a first-person view of your surroundings in the upper left, a mini-map in the lower portion of the screen, along with commands that you can choose to interact with the environment. Then you have your inventory section in the upper right. You can move around in a non-linear fashion, exploring the areas, opening doors, examining the areas, and taking items, finding and using keys, or learning magical spells. This is a much more chill NES gaming experience compared to the frantic button-mashing shoot-'em-ups and platformers that you would most likely be accustomed to as a gamer at that time. I always enjoyed the heck out of these MacVenture games because it felt like you were getting a computer adventure gaming experience, but on the home console. It's just so different than the types of NES games you'd normally see. The story here is you wake up after a car crash to find that your sister who was with you in the car has gone missing. You get out of the car just before it explodes to find that you're in front of this foreboding old mansion. You figure your sister must have gone inside for help, so you set in after her to see where she went. As you continue to explore the mansion, a sense of dread sets in as you become increasingly aware of the fact that the only inhabitants of this place don't seem to be among the living. Most of the story is divulged through diaries that you find throughout the mansion, which reveal horrific accounts from the former residents. There's a totally original backstory about a mystical sorcerer who had an apprentice named Draken who grew too powerful and started using magic for evil, because that's just what apprentices do when they learn magic, right? Along the way, you'll also run into all sorts of terrors: ghosts, spiders, flying tomato monsters, zombies, hellhounds, bloated snakes, little dancing monsters, one-eyed bats. Some of the imagery is downright creepy for an NES game. My favorite is the Scarlet O'Hara ghost, which is also featured on the cover of the box. She first appears in a hallway with her back turned to you. She seems harmless enough, but if you try to move past or talk to her, oh god, oh crap, she murders you and you die and then you're dead. You'll have to find a can of no-ghost spray to dump on her in order to get past. It's crazy to think how adult-themed this game was. The description the game gives when the ghost kills you is grisly in detail. You have gotten the attention of the mysterious lady. She turns to face you. Her face is devoid of any flesh. You are frozen with horror as she begins ripping you apart. She laughs hysterically as your body slumps to the ground. There's more like this too. When you find the ghost of the butler that used to live in the mansion, if you don't do just the right thing, he slimes you, and the slime is acid. The screaming apparition's misty form engulfs you and you become covered in a thick, sticky goo. It's acid. It doesn't take long for it to dissolve your body. Holy crap! This would be a good time to mention that you die a lot in this game. It's a good old-fashioned try-it-and-die adventure game, but with the save feature as well as a liberal continue option that just starts you a screen or two back, it never gets annoying or over the top. Sometimes it's fun to just find more ways to die to see what kind of grotesque imagery the developers put in there. Check out this horde of zombies you stumble across in the maze, especially when you see a close-up of their face. Ugh. There's also this weird cell where the inhabitant is just standing there. In the computer version, he's actually holding his own decapitated head, but the Big N had them tone down some of the violence a bit for the NES release. Still though, it looks like he has blood on his hands, and every time you die, you're greeted with this creepy blood-red skull, which still somehow made it into the NES version. There was a lot of text that got censored too for the NES release, like some of the descriptions of the deaths, which is crazy considering what made it in, and they changed some of the religious overtones. In the computer version, you find a cross that you use in the final battle, but on the NES it's replaced with a goblet which has holy water in it. Another thing, the original address for the mansion was 666 Blackwell Road. That got edited in the NES version, but the envelope still reads that it was addressed to Master Crowley. I'm not sure if Nintendo just missed that reference or didn't put two and two together, because that was most likely a reference to Aleister Crowley, who's pretty much the founder of modern Satanism. Remember the song Mr. Crowley by Ozzy Osbourne? I'll put a link in the description if you want to check out more of the side-by-side comparisons of what got edited out for the NES release. I mentioned dying, and that's where it gets to the crux of what these adventure games are all about. Trial and error. On the one hand, you could argue that Uninvited is actually a bit easier than the other entries in the MacVenture series. It doesn't seem like there are nearly as many puzzles this time around compared to, say, Shadowgate. You could beat the game in 15 to 20 minutes if you know what you're doing. However, there is a bit of a reason for this. In the computer version, there was a time limit on the game. As your character explored the mansion, he'd start to grow more and more insane from the overwhelming evil presence that dwells there, eventually becoming a zombie and joining the rest of the undead. The NES removes the time limit for the most part, although it does add in a devious red herring. As you're exploring the mansion, you find a mysterious blood ruby in one of the dresser drawers upstairs. Your natural inclination is to go ahead and grab it, seems important enough, and the key to success in just about every adventure game is to take any item the game mechanics allow you to pick up, right? Well, if you pick up the blood ruby, then you start to go a little more insane after every turn and eventually die. The evil presence proves too much for you. You are united with the massive horde of undead that inhabit this estate. You turn around to see your horrific new master, a blood-red skull smiling fiendishly at you. Your quest is over. Dang. The thing is, there's really no indication in the game that the ruby is the cause of the death timer. If you just put the ruby down or don't pick it up at all, there's no time limit and you're free to explore and find plenty of other ways to die on your own. It's a dirty trick, and I remember getting fooled by it plenty of times when I was a kid before finally figuring it out. But how would you know? Furthermore, this game, more than any other game in the series, has so much useless crap to pick up. In the computer version, you could only carry a total of 15 items. However, in this version, you have unlimited carrying capacity, and you're going to need it to carry the haul of over 60 obtainable items scattered throughout the mansion. This whole place is like sifting through your grandparents' boxes at a rummage sale. Spatulas, pots and pans, kitchen knives, serving bowls, jars, flour, ink blotter. Ink blotter? What am I supposed to do with an ink blotter? Some of the puzzles make sense, like if you search the couch at the front of the house, the description tells you that it feels like there is something hard sewn into it. Use one of the kitchen knives to cut open the couch and you'll find a key that you can use to unlock several things around the mansion. Hey, that seems logical. But in other instances, like with the butler ghost, would you guess that you're supposed to find a can of pesticide, use it on the ledge where you see the spider, leave the room and come back in so the spider walks across the ledge where you sprayed and gets paralyzed? Pick up the paralyzed spider and then carry it to the butler's quarters and throw it at the butler ghost because he's terrified of spiders. Then you can get the diary out from behind the picture on the wall. Who would think to do that? To my knowledge, nowhere in this game does it give you any indication that this ghost is terrified of spiders. At least in Shadowgate or Deja Vu, for the most part, if you're patient and explore the areas carefully, you can get through the game solely on in-game hints the developers sprinkled in there. But that's all fairly minimal here with the Uninvited. I remember getting through this as a kid, and I'm pretty sure I had to just go around using every item in the inventory until I figured out a solution. Just going around flinging spatulas and flour at ghosts until something happened. But hey, it's not all gloom and doom. Here's an adventure game tip from your old Uncle Aaron. In most of these games, there's a place where you can dispose of items that you're carrying. In Shadowgate, you could throw items into the fountain at the back of the castle. In Deja Vu, you could throw items away in the sewers. Here in Uninvited, you can throw them in the backyard behind the mansion. But here's the thing, the developers are nice enough to throw up a red flag and have the game stop you if you try to throw away an item you actually need. So just pick everything up, walk out to the backyard, and toss every item on the ground that the game will allow. Whatever you have left in your inventory afterward is crucial to your quest, which should save you on some trial and error later on. No wonder these ghosts were always trying to kill me. I basically broke into their house, cleaned out their pantry, and threw everything in the yard. Probably looks like an estate sale threw up back there. This game also has a sense of humor about it, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. For example, when you're in the church, you find a secret passage that goes to an underground tunnel. If you try to go down the tunnel, the game warns you not to go down there because there's a giant spider. You really don't want to climb down there. There's a spider down there that's bigger than a bread box. No, really, that spider is bad news. Don't try to go down there. Of course, you go down there and, well, what do you know? It's a giant spider. It crushes your tiny body in its large, powerful jaws. This game has a few fun callbacks to other entries in the MacVenture series as well. For example, as you're exploring the maze, you find a gravestone marked with the name Ace Harding. That's the detective from Deja Vu. Also, if you try to play the phonograph in the game room, it briefly plays the main overture from Shadowgate. This game is still fun though, at least to me. It was cool to me just getting a computer gaming experience on a home console. At the time, we didn't have a computer. Who could afford one? They cost as much as a car back then, so this was the next best thing. After I got my feet wet with Shadowgate, I bought these games every time they came out, and I wish they would have made more of them. As far as where Uninvited ranks among the others in the MacVenture series, it's probably not my favorite. Shadowgate is still my go-to in this genre, but that doesn't mean this entry is bad by any stretch. Like I mentioned before, the lack of logical in-game clues for some of the puzzles is a bit of a detractor. Also, I wasn't as big of a fan of the music this time around. It does a good job of setting the spooky tone, but it's not all that memorable. I will also mention that the mansion isn't nearly as intriguing of a setting to me. It's a cool concept, but for the most part, you're just exploring very normal looking rooms in this kind of boring house. You're just creeping through some random dude's bedroom, reading his diary, and then ransacking his utility closet. Eventually, you find a maze and some creepy caves, but that's only a small percentage of the game. I will say that it makes up for it with the horrifying ghostly images and jump scares though. Also, all of these Kimco adventure games just kind of have a specific art style that I really enjoy. They all kind of look the same and the look is kind of its own thing. It's cool, I like it. I do have to comment on the ending of the game, so there be spoilers ahead, yarr. By the time you get to the end of the caves, you find this Shang Tsung looking guy who tells you the rest of the backstory about Draken. Then you thaw out this big chunk of ice and it turns out Draken was just frozen there the whole time. His body floats down the caves and then you're just standing there with his sleeping body. The solution is literally to just kick him into this pit in the middle of the room. That's it. No big epic final showdown or anything. Then you climb up a staircase and you're just instantly back in the mansion. This time you can hear your sister screaming. When you find her upstairs, she's possessed by a demon and the solution is to just throw holy water on it. Boom. That's it. It just doesn't have the same grandeur or scale as the final battle with the behemoth and Shadowgate and having to find and assemble all the pieces to the weapon before the big showdown. I realize I'm nitpicking here. Don't get me wrong, this is still a good game. It just feels like kind of a letdown for a final battle. Overall though, I still highly recommend checking out all of the NES versions of the MacVenture series if you get the chance. Unfortunately, Uninvited is the most expensive of the bunch as it was released later in the NES lifespan and as such is a bit more rare. A loose cartridge goes for somewhere between 40 and 50 bucks. These games were ridiculously good fun and some of my all-time favorite childhood adventure gaming experiences. What do you think? Did you play Uninvited or any of the others in the MacVenture series growing up? What are some of your other favorite spooky titles on the NES? I'd love to hear about your experience with this one. Hey, I do this sort of thing all the time on my channel. If you enjoyed this, feel free to leave a like as it does help, and here's some other videos that you might enjoy. You can also subscribe for new videos each week, and if you haven't already done so, make sure to click the bell notification on the front page because otherwise YouTube has a funny habit of not letting you know when I've uploaded a new video. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.